Empty your pockets and get on the ground. The officer's gun points at a black motorcyclist who hasn't broken a single law. Officer Tanner tears the helmet from the rider's head, revealing a face carved from patience and resolve. Fancy bike for your kind. Where'd you steal it? The rider's eyes sharp, assessing fix on Tanner's nameplate and badge. Officer Briggs dumps the saddlebags, military documents scattered like confetti. Colonel James Wilson, he reads mockingly. Yeah, right. Playing soldier? Tanner sneers, pressing a boot against the rider's back. If you're a colonel, I'm the commander-in-chief. The rider speaks once, voice steel beneath silk. I need to make one call. Lawyers don't work roadside, Tanner laughs, cuffs biting into wrists. A dangerous calm settles over the rider's features. You have 5 minutes before you destroy your career. As the patrol car pulls away, military satellites overhead silently track its movement. Colonel James Wilson eases his custom Harley along the sun-baked highway outside Lakeside. His riding gear premium but understated offers no hint of his 30 years in military service or his current position directing Pentagon Special Operations logistics. The charity ride supporting veterans' mental health brings him through small towns like this one regularly. Today, like most days off base, he's just another black man on an expensive motorcycle. Officers Tanner and Briggs idle in their patrol car at the town limits. Tanner, a 17-year veteran with 3 excessive force complaints buried in his file, drums impatient fingers on the steering wheel. At 38, the sergeant's promotion he expected remains elusive, souring his outlook. Beside him, Briggs, 24 and fresh-faced, watches Tanner for cues on how real policing works. Look at that, Tanner straightens as Wilson's Harley approaches. Pretty nice ride. Briggs nods. Custom work's not cheap. Not too nice for around here. Tanner's eyes narrow. Bet there's a reason he can afford it. The implication hangs in the air, unsupported by anything except assumption. Wilson pulls into a gas station, movements efficient and precise. He fills the tank, then enters the store for water. The owner, Mrs. Powell, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes, notices his military ID when he pays. "Thank you for your service," she says with genuine respect. Wilson offers a modest smile. "Just doing my job, ma'am." Back in the patrol car, Tanner's attention remains fixed on Wilson as he exits the station. Let's see what he's running. They pull out behind the motorcycle. No traffic violations occur, but Tanner activates the lights anyway. Wilson signals properly and pulls to the shoulder, kickstand down, hands visible on the handlebars. Textbook compliance. Through his mirrors, Wilson watches the officers approach. His expression remains neutral, but his eyes hold the wariness born from previous experiences. The insignia on his military ID won't protect him from what comes next. It never has. Tanner approaches with his hand resting on his holster, stance aggressive. License and registration. "May I reach for my wallet, officer?" Wilson asks, voice carefully modulated. Slowly, Tanner barks, the word itself an accusation. Wilson retrieves his military ID and vehicle registration with deliberate movements. Tanner snatches them, studying the ID with open skepticism. "Colonel?" Tanner looks at Briggs with a smirk. "In what army?" "United States Army," Wilson replies evenly. 30 years of service. Briggs shifts uncomfortably. Tanner ignores Wilson's statement entirely. "Where are you coming from? Where are you headed?" The rapid-fire questions come without acknowledging Wilson's identification. Wilson explains the charity ride calmly, mentioning the veterans event he's attending. His words precise, respectful despite the treatment. Tanner's expression hardens. "Step off the bike, now." "May I ask why I'm being asked to dismount, officer?" Wilson maintains eye contact. "Because I said so." Tanner's voice rises. "Do it now." Wilson swings his leg over the motorcycle with military precision, knowing exactly what happens to black men who question authority. Wilson stands beside his motorcycle, hands visible at his sides. Sunlight gleams off the polished chrome of his Harley as Tanner circles him like a predator assessing prey. Briggs hangs back, uncertainty creeping into his posture as he examines Wilson's military ID more closely. "This doesn't look right," Tanner claims, though the military ID with its security features and holographic elements is clearly legitimate. "Lot of fakes going around these days." Wilson maintains his composure, voice steady. "Officer, I've properly identified myself. May I ask why I was stopped? We've had reports of drug trafficking on this route." The lie rolls easily off Tanner's tongue. No such reports exist. "Motorcycles are common transport." "I understand your concern," Wilson responds. "I assure you I'm simply passing through on a charity ride." Tanner's eyes narrow. "Mind if we take a look at your bags?" It's not really a question. Without waiting for consent, Tanner nods to Briggs, who approaches the motorcycle's saddlebags. "Officer," Wilson interjects, his tone firm but not confrontational. "With respect, you need probable cause to search my vehicle." Tanner steps closer, using his height to intimidate. "Refusing a search? What are you hiding, Colonel?" The title drips with contempt. Briggs pauses, glancing between the two men. Something about this feels wrong, but he's too new to challenge Tanner's lead. "I'm not refusing," Wilson clarifies. "I'm stating my constitutional rights as a citizen." "Step back and put your hands on your head," Tanner orders, voice hardening. His hand drifts toward his holster, a calculated gesture. Wilson complies with precision, military bearing evident in every movement. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor, officer." "Oh, you want special treatment?" Tanner sneers. "Not happening." The radio crackles, dispatch reporting a disturbance across town. Tanner deliberately ignores it, fixated on Wilson. Wilson notices Tanner's body camera is off. He checks the time on his watch, the gesture subtle but deliberate. He's documenting everything. Briggs begins searching the saddlebags without authorization. He finds a sealed envelope bearing military insignia. Tanner grabs it, tearing the envelope open without care. "That's classified material, officer." Wilson's voice changes subtly, a commander's authority seeping through his civilian restraint. "Sure it is." Tanner scoffs, deliberately scattering the papers across the ground where the wind catches them, sending them tumbling along the roadside. A silver sedan slows as it passes. The driver, a middle-aged woman, begins recording with her phone. Tanner shouts at her to move along, his attention momentarily divided. Wilson stands motionless, his military training evident in his disciplined response. Each violation is mentally catalogued, each moment recorded in his memory with timestamp precision. "Where'd you get this bike?" Tanner demands, running his hand possessively over the handlebars. "Seems too expensive for..." He catches himself before finishing the blatantly biased statement. "I purchased it legally," Wilson responds evenly. "The registration is in your hand." Tanner unclips his handcuffs with a metallic click that cuts through the air like a promise. "On your knees," Tanner commands, jingling the handcuffs. "Now." Wilson complies, lowering himself to the scorching asphalt. The heat burns through his riding pants, but his face betrays nothing. Decades of military discipline manifest as dignified silence in the face of humiliation. Tanner grabs Wilson's helmet from the motorcycle seat, yanking it roughly by the strap. "No concealing your face out here." He tosses the expensive helmet carelessly onto the ground where it bounces once before settling in the dirt. Wilson's close-cropped gray hair and distinguished features come fully into view. A small scar traces his right cheekbone, a reminder of combat long ago. His eyes, clear and penetrating, continue their steady assessment of the situation. These eyes have witnessed war zones across 3 continents, now watching injustice unfold on American soil. "Colonel Wilson?" Tanner mocks, examining the military ID again. "Sure. And I'm General Patton. He flips the ID carelessly into the dust near Wilson's knees. Briggs continues rummaging through the motorcycle, pulling out a small metal case. He opens it to reveal a collection of military challenge coins and medals. His expression shifts, discomfort growing as evidence mounts that Wilson might actually be who he claims. "Tanner, these look legitimate," Briggs says quietly. Tanner ignores him, focused on Wilson's wallet now, emptying its contents onto the ground. Credit cards, receipts, and a photograph spill out. The photo shows Wilson in full-dress uniform, standing among the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Tanner glances at it, then deliberately steps over the image. Wilson remains silent, eyes tracking Tanner's badge number, memorizing details with military precision. Nothing escapes his notice. The timestamp on Tanner's watch, Briggs's hesitation, the gathering audience across the street. "Where'd you steal these military items from?" Tanner demands, kicking at the scattered challenge coins. "Those are my earned decorations, officer," Wilson replies, his voice level despite the indignity of his position. Across the street at the gas station, a small crowd begins to gather. Mrs. Powell stands in the doorway, hand over her mouth. Beside her, customers raise phones, recording the scene. The audience grows by the minute, silent witnesses to the unfolding abuse of power. Tanner notices the attention. "Nothing to see here," he shouts before turning back to Wilson. "Your kind always causes a scene." Wilson's expression doesn't change, but his eyes register the comment, cataloging it alongside every other violation. Briggs discovers a satellite phone in the side compartment of the motorcycle, military-grade communications equipment, compact and sophisticated. "Look at this," he calls to Tanner. "Satellite phone." Tanner snatches it. "Drug dealers use these to avoid detection." He examines the device with exaggerated suspicion. "High-tech stuff to stay off the grid." "That's standard military issue for my position," Wilson states flatly. Tanner laughs, tossing the expensive device onto the ground beside the scattered papers. "Sure it is, Colonel." "Officer Tanner," Wilson says, emphasizing the name, "you're making a significant error." Tanner freezes. "How do you know my name?" "It's on your nameplate, officer," Wilson replies, gaze unwavering. "What else do you know?" Tanner demands, sudden paranoia edging his voice. "I know enough to suggest you reconsider your actions," Wilson says, each word measured and precise. Tanner's face contorts with anger at what he perceives as a threat. He yanks Wilson's arms behind his back, cuffing him with unnecessary force. "Threatening an officer now?" Wilson winces slightly as the metal bites into his wrists, but maintains his composure. "Maybe we should call this in," Briggs suggests, uncertainty growing. "Check his story?" "He's playing you," Tanner snaps. "These guys always have a story." Wilson speaks again, calm but firm. "I need to make a call within the next 5 minutes. It's a matter of national security." Tanner laughs. "National security? You'll call your lawyer from the station." "That would be unwise," Wilson states simply. Tanner drags Wilson toward the patrol car. "You're under arrest for possession of falsified government documents and resisting arrest." "I haven't resisted," Wilson points out reasonably, "and my documents are authentic." The crowd across the street has grown larger. More phones recording, the scene becoming a spectacle of injustice captured in real time. As Wilson is forced into the back seat, his eyes meet those of an elderly veteran in the crowd who recognizes exactly who they're arresting. The elderly veteran watches in disbelief as the patrol car pulls away. Frank Thompson, 72, former Army sergeant, recognizes Colonel Wilson instantly. Those distinctive features had appeared in Army Times just last month. Thompson's weathered hands tremble with indignation as he hurries toward the gas station. "Mrs. Powell," he calls to the store owner. "That officer just arrested Colonel James Wilson." Mrs. Powell's eyes widen. "The motorcyclist. Are you sure?" "Served 30 years. Runs Special Ops Logistics at the Pentagon." Thompson's voice carries the certainty of someone who still reads every military publication. "My grandson serves under his command." That Tanner has been trouble for years. Mrs. Powell shakes her head. Always picking on the wrong people. Thompson's jaw sets with determination. Not this time. I need to use your phone. Inside the patrol car, Wilson sits upright despite the handcuffs forcing his shoulders back uncomfortably. The discomfort is meaningless. He's endured far worse. His military training included resistance to interrogation, scenarios preparing officers for captivity. This situation differs in jurisdiction, but follows familiar patterns of power and control. Tanner drives, repeatedly glancing in the rearview mirror. Wilson's steady gaze unsettles him. I'm telling you, Briggs says quietly, something doesn't add up. Maybe we should verify his ID before processing. You going soft? Tanner snaps. He's playing you. These guys always do. Wilson remains silent, observing the time on his wristwatch. The military-grade timepiece, far more than a simple watch, begins a silent countdown sequence visible only to him. Embedded communications technology activating emergency protocols. At the gas station, Frank Thompson punches a number into Mrs. Powell's phone with urgency. His grandson, Lieutenant Thompson, answers on the second ring. Lieutenant Thompson speaking. David, it's Grandpa. Listen carefully. The elder Thompson explains the situation in rapid, precise military shorthand. They've arrested Colonel Wilson. Roadside harassment. No cause. Silence on the line, then, Colonel Wilson, the deputy director, on what charges? Looked like profiling, pure and simple. Officer named Tanner. I need to inform command immediately, Lieutenant Thompson responds, his voice shifting to formal alert mode. Thank you, sir. The call ends. Frank Thompson hands the phone back to Mrs. Powell, his expression grim but satisfied. Now we wait. Inside a secure military facility 30 miles away, Lieutenant Thompson moves with purpose through security checkpoints. His access badge opens doors that remain locked to most personnel. He reaches his commanding officer's office, knocks once, enters without waiting. Sir, we have a situation. Colonel Wilson has been detained by local police. The commanding officer looks up sharply. On what authority? None, sir. Appears to be harassment. Alarm spreads through the chain of command with military efficiency. Phones ring, secure messages transmit, personnel mobilize. In the patrol car, Wilson breaks his silence. Officer Tanner, this is your final opportunity to correct your mistake. Tanner scoffs, but uncertainty flickers across his face. Save it for the judge. In approximately 3 minutes, your actions will have consequences you're unprepared for, Wilson states, voice devoid of threat, simply conveying facts. Tanner forces a laugh that sounds hollow even to his own ears. At the military base, the emergency response team assembles. Officers receive briefing in rapid, efficient bursts of information. Colonel Wilson has been illegally detained while carrying classified materials, the base commander explains. The Secretary of Defense has been notified and has authorized immediate intervention. Military police vehicles and Humvees line up at the gate, engines running. Precision and urgency in every movement. Base commander speaks into a secure line. Confirm satellite tracking on the patrol vehicle. We have visual? Affirmative, sir. Full track established. The military convoy begins moving out, a coordinated response to a threat against national security personnel. Inside the patrol car, Wilson maintains his composed silence. Briggs checks his phone, growing increasingly anxious. Tanner, you should see this. He holds up his screen. Social media's blowing up with videos of the arrest. People are saying he's really a high-ranking officer. Since when do we police by Twitter? Tanner snaps, but sweat beads on his forehead. 1 minute remaining, Officer Tanner, Wilson states calmly. Until what? Tanner demands, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Wilson doesn't answer. His silent dignity more powerful than any threat could be. Police dispatch crackles urgently over the radio as a formation of black helicopters appears on the horizon. Chief Bennett's phone rings in the middle of a budget meeting. He glances at the display the mayor's office and excuses himself. The mayor never calls directly unless something's wrong. "Bennett," he answers, stepping into the hallway. "Chief, what the hell is happening?" The mayor's voice crackles with tension. "I just got off the phone with the governor who got a call from the Pentagon about one of your officers detaining a high-ranking military official." Bennett's stomach drops. "Sir, I don't know what—" "Fix it! Now!" The call ends abruptly. Bennett rushes to dispatch, sweat dampening his collar. "Get me Officer Tanner immediately." "We've been trying, sir," the dispatcher responds. "He's not answering radio calls." Bennett curses under his breath. "Where is he?" "Approaching the station. ETA 3 minutes." Bennett strides toward the station entrance, barking orders as he moves. "I want every officer on duty outside, now." Meanwhile, Tanner and Briggs approach the station with Wilson still cuffed in the back seat. Tanner has deliberately turned off his radio, ignoring the increasingly frantic calls from dispatch. Wilson sits calmly, watching the time. "Your chief is trying to reach you." "How would you know that?" Tanner snaps, eyes flicking nervously to the rearview mirror. "Because in approximately 30 seconds, your career in law enforcement ends," Wilson states without emotion. Pure assessment, not threat. Tanner forces a laugh, but his hands tighten on the wheel. As they pull into the station parking lot, an unusual scene unfolds. The entire department seems to have assembled outside. Chief Bennett stands front and center, face ashen. "Tanner, stop right there!" Bennett shouts the moment the patrol car comes to a halt. "Release him immediately!" Tanner exits slowly, confusion evident. "Chief, uncuff him now!" Bennett rushes forward. "Do you have any idea who you've arrested?" Tanner hesitates, defensive posture setting in. "He had fake military ID." "That's Colonel James Wilson, Deputy Director of Special Operations Logistics at the Pentagon." Bennett's voice carries across the parking lot, each word a nail in Tanner's career coffin. Briggs moves immediately, opening the rear door and carefully removing Wilson's handcuffs. "I'm sorry, sir," he murmurs, genuine regret in his voice. The distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors fills the air. Multiple black SUVs with government plates screech into the parking lot, forming a perimeter. Wilson steps from the patrol car, straightening his jacket with dignified movements. Despite the ordeal, his composure remains intact. "Thank you, Officer Briggs." Military personnel in crisp uniforms exit the vehicles, approaching with purposeful strides. Tanner backs away, desperation creeping into his voice. "He was acting suspicious." "I was riding my motorcycle on a public road," Wilson corrects him calmly. Bennett turns to Tanner, fury barely contained. "You've really done it this time." The military officers surround Wilson, creating a protective formation. A senior officer steps forward, saluting sharply. "Colonel, are you all right, sir?" Wilson returns the salute with precision. "I'm fine, Major." Tanner watches in dawning horror as Wilson's true position becomes undeniable, the military's response confirming what he refused to believe. Wilson addresses the Major. "The classified documents that were scattered need to be recovered immediately." "Already in progress, sir," the Major responds, gesturing to a team deploying from one of the vehicles. The ground vibrates beneath their feet as the first of many Humvees crests the hill, green metal catching the afternoon sun. The police station parking lot transforms before everyone's eyes. Military precision replaces civilian chaos as Humvees establish a perimeter, their diesel engines rumbling in synchronized harmony. Military police in full tactical gear deploy methodically, securing the area with practiced efficiency. At the center of this operation stands Wilson, no longer the humiliated detainee, but the clear authority figure. Officers and officials now orbit around him like planets around a sun. The power shift is palpable. Chief Bennett leads Wilson inside the station, apologizing profusely with every step. "Colonel, I can't express how deeply sorry the department is for this incident." Wilson walks beside him, posture military straight. "This isn't about me, Chief. This is about procedure, training, and bias." Bennett nods quickly. "I understand, sir. Officer Tanner has had issues before." Wilson stops, fixing Bennett with a penetrating gaze. "Yet he remains on your force." The chief has no response, the uncomfortable truth hanging between them. Outside, Tanner attempts to slip away amid the confusion, edging toward his personal vehicle. Two military MPs intercept him with synchronized movements, appearing as if from nowhere. "Officer Tanner," one states flatly, "Colonel Wilson requires your presence." Tanner's face hardens, defiance masking fear. He has no authority over local police. The MP's expression doesn't change. Perhaps not, but the FBI agents who just arrived do. Two individuals in dark suits approach, credentials already extended. "Officer Tanner, Special Agents Cruz and Patel, FBI Civil Rights Division." The blood drains from Tanner's face. "Civil Rights Division?" Agent Cruz nods once. "We'll need a complete statement regarding today's events." "I was just doing my job," Tanner protests, voice rising defensively. "Were you?" Agent Cruz asks quietly. "We have witness statements and video evidence suggesting otherwise." Inside the station, Wilson confers with military legal officers in a glass-walled conference room. Their discussion focuses on jurisdictional boundaries, the interplay between civilian and military authority. "Sir, we could handle this internally," a military lawyer suggests, leaning forward. "Make it go away." Wilson shakes his head firmly. "No, that perpetuates the problem. This needs to be addressed through proper civilian channels." "With respect, Colonel, this could become a media circus." "Then it becomes one," Wilson states. "Accountability requires visibility." Outside the conference room, Officer Briggs waits nervously. When Wilson emerges, Briggs approaches with hesitant steps. "Sir, I want to apologize," he begins, voice unsteady. "I should have stopped it." Wilson studies the young officer, measuring his character. "Yes, you should have. Moral courage is harder than physical courage, Officer Briggs. Remember that." Briggs nods, the lesson landing with the weight of truth. The station doors burst open as the mayor arrives, straightening his tie as he hurries toward Wilson. His hand extends preemptively. "Colonel Wilson, this is a terrible misunderstanding," he announces, political smile firmly in place. Wilson looks at the offered hand but doesn't take it. "This wasn't a misunderstanding, Mayor. This was systemic failure." The mayor's hand drops slowly, smile fading. Behind him, news vans begin arriving outside, reporters deploying equipment with practiced speed. A senior Pentagon official emerges from a black SUV, face grim as aides scramble to clear his path to Wilson. General Hayes strides through the station doors, his 4 stars glinting under fluorescent lights. Junior officers snap to attention as he passes. His presence transforms the police station into an extension of the Pentagon's authority, civilian jurisdiction temporarily eclipsed by military necessity. Hayes moves directly to Wilson, ignoring the mayor and police officials. "James, the Secretary of Defense is demanding updates every 15 minutes. This has reached the White House." Wilson nods once, calm amid the accelerating storm. "Tell them I'm handling it, sir." "The classified materials?" Hayes asks, lowering his voice. "Being recovered. Breach protocol initiated," Wilson confirms. His eyes track the military team currently securing scattered documents outside. Initial assessment indicates no critical compromise. Hayes notices Tanner being questioned by the FBI agents across the room. His eyes narrow. "Is that him?" Wilson follows his gaze and nods. Hayes's expression hardens. Want me to destroy him? No. Wilson's response is immediate. We follow procedure. Always. Hayes raises an eyebrow but doesn't argue. The principal has guided Wilson's career accountability through proper channels, not backroom retribution. Wilson's phone rings. He checks the display and straightens almost imperceptibly. Excuse me, sir. It's the secretary. He steps away to take the call, responses measured and precise. Yes, Mr. Secretary. No compromise of alpha materials. Yes, sir. Proceeding through appropriate channels. Meanwhile, Chief Bennett reviews body camera footage with the FBI agents in his office. Tanner had turned his off, but Briggs, following department policy, had left his active. The footage shows the entire incident in damning detail. Tanner paces in the break room, watched by a stoic MP. He sees fellow officers passing in the hallway, avoiding eye contact. The isolation of the fallen. He attempts conversation with a longtime colleague who merely shakes his head and continues walking. Outside, local news vans have multiplied, reporters setting up for live broadcasts. The story spreading through social media and news alerts. Military officer illegally detained. Racial profiling incident draws Pentagon response. Wilson concludes his call and rejoins General Hayes. Sir, I need to make a statement. Hayes frowns. That might not be advisable given the sensitive nature. With respect, sir, Wilson interrupts gently. Silence serves no one. This isn't about me. It's about accountability. Hayes studies Wilson's face, then nods reluctantly. Keep it focused on policy, not classified operations. Always, sir. Wilson approaches the police station steps where reporters have gathered. The police chief and mayor attempt to position themselves advantageously, each trying to control the narrative. Wilson waits patiently as the mayor gives a statement filled with political evasions about unfortunate incidents and pending full investigations. When Wilson steps forward, the crowd quiets naturally. His authority radiates without effort, decades of command presence evident in his bearing alone. I am Colonel James Wilson, United States Army, he begins, voice clear and measured. What happened today happens to citizens across America daily. The difference is, I have the Pentagon behind me. Most victims of profiling don't. The statement lands with devastating simplicity. No embellishment needed. Reporters erupt with questions. Wilson answers selectively, each response factual and controlled. No anger, no accusations, just clear statements that cut through political obfuscation. Through the station window, Tanner watches his career disintegrate in real time, each of Wilson's measured words another nail in its coffin. A sleek government car pulls up as Wilson concludes his statement. Someone unexpected has arrived to change the game entirely. The government car's door opens smoothly. A civilian aide emerges first, carrying a garment bag with military precision. He approaches Wilson with a respectful nod, deliberately ignoring the swarm of reporters shouting questions. Chief Bennett hurries over, anxiety evident in his movements. Colonel, we've prepared a statement of apology from the department. Wilson raises a hand slightly. One moment, Chief. He takes the garment bag with a nod of thanks. The exchange appears insignificant to observers, but General Hayes watches with understanding in his eyes. Wilson enters the station briefly, the doors closing behind him as reporters speculate wildly. Inside a private office, Wilson unzips the garment bag methodically. He removes his riding jacket, replacing it with a meticulously pressed uniform. The transformation is more than clothing, it's revelation. Outside, Tanner watches through a window, confusion replacing defiance. What's happening now? He mutters to no one in particular. When the station doors reopen minutes later, Colonel James Wilson has vanished. In his place stands Major General James Wilson, 2 stars gleaming on each shoulder of his immaculate dress uniform. Multiple rows of combat decorations span his chest, telling a story of exceptional service most civilians couldn't fully comprehend. The revelation ripples through the assembled crowd. Reporters fumble with cameras. Police officers stare in disbelief. Tanner, glimpsing Wilson's true rank for the first time, pales visibly, the blood draining from his face as the magnitude of his error becomes fully apparent. General Hayes approaches Wilson, rendering a formal salute that Wilson returns with equal precision. "General, your security team is quite concerned about today's events." The use of Wilson's proper rank sends another shockwave through the audience. Not just a colonel, a general. Wilson steps to the microphones again, his authority now visually undeniable. The crowd falls silent without prompting. "Today was not an isolated incident," he begins, voice measured but carrying effortlessly. "It represents a pattern affecting military personnel of color across this nation. Over the past 6 months, I've been conducting an official Pentagon review of such incidents near our installations." The revelation lands like thunder. Wilson hasn't merely been a victim of profiling, he's been conducting an official investigation into such incidents. His presence in Lakeside wasn't coincidental but purposeful, part of a broader Pentagon initiative. The Department of Defense has a duty to ensure the safety and equal treatment of all service members. When a general can be profiled and detained illegally, imagine what happens to our enlisted personnel. Wilson gestures to a team of military attorneys who step forward carrying tablets and folders. "These officers from our Civil Rights Division have been documenting cases throughout the region." One of the attorneys approaches the microphone. "General Wilson's case will be added to the 43 similar incidents we've documented involving military personnel of color in just this region." The mayor shifts uncomfortably, suddenly understanding the broader implications. This isn't merely about one traffic stop gone wrong, it's about systemic patterns now documented by the Pentagon itself. Wilson continues, "This isn't about one officer or one department. It's about systemic issues requiring systemic solutions." Inside, Tanner watches military officers reviewing Briggs's body cam footage on tablets, discussing specific violations with FBI agents. His career's implosion unfolds in real time before his eyes. Wilson moves with quiet efficiency, directing his staff through the next steps of what is clearly a well-established protocol. The military operation expands not through force, but through bureaucratic and legal channels that cannot be stopped or diverted. A new group of officials enters the station, representatives from the Department of Justice who've been alerted by Wilson's office the moment he was detained. General Wilson's detention triggers automatic federal review under Executive Order 13892, announces a DOJ official to the police chief, who realizes with growing horror that he's losing control of his department as federal and military authorities establish jurisdiction. Wilson approaches Briggs, who stands uncertainly near the dispatch desk. "Officer Briggs, you hesitated today. You knew something was wrong but followed anyway." Briggs looks down, shame evident. "Yes, sir. That moment of hesitation shows potential," Wilson says quietly. "Build on it. Moral courage can be developed like any muscle." The teaching moment contrasts sharply with Tanner's situation. One officer offered guidance for growth, another facing consequences for entrenchment. Wilson returns to the assembled officials, his bearing reflecting absolute authority without arrogance. "I expect full compliance with the federal investigation. Obstruction will not be tolerated." His tone makes clear this isn't personal vengeance but institutional correction. The distinction matters to Wilson, who has built his career on principles rather than power. Wilson's aide approaches with a secure satellite phone, voice lowered respectfully. "Sir, the White House is requesting immediate input on civil rights legislation." 1 week later, the Pentagon's central briefing room hums with tense energy. Military brass and civilian leadership fill the tiered seating, all eyes focused on the presentation screen. Wilson stands at the podium, dress uniform impeccable, his bearing commanding respect without demanding it. 78 documented cases of profiling involving military personnel of color in the past 6 months, Wilson states, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. 42% resulted in illegal detention or search. 93% involved no probable cause beyond the service member's appearance and vehicle. The data scrolls across screens, dates, locations, patterns emerging from individual incidents. Wilson's methodical presentation transforms anecdotes into undeniable evidence. The defense secretary leans forward. "General, your recommendations?" Wilson transitions to the next slide seamlessly. A comprehensive approach addressing both military and civilian dimensions of the problem. He outlines a multi-pronged strategy. Enhanced legal support for service members, mandatory civil rights compliance training for bases and surrounding communities, data sharing between military and civilian authorities, and legislative reforms to strengthen accountability measures. Meanwhile, in Lakeside, the FBI Civil Rights Division has established temporary offices in City Hall. Agents in dark suits move through the building with purpose, conducting interviews and reviewing years of records. Local officers watch warily as federal authorities examine traffic stop data, arrest records, and complaint histories. Chief Bennett sits across from two FBI agents, tie loosened, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. He's been answering questions for hours, cooperating fully in an attempt to salvage what remains of his career. "Yes, we've had previous complaints about Officer Tanner," he admits. 3 excessive force, 2 discrimination. "And the department's response?" Agent Cruz asks, already knowing the answer from the files spread between them. Bennett shifts uncomfortably. "Verbal counseling, 1 suspension, 3 days. For 5 serious complaints." It's not a question. Across town, the mayor faces an emergency town council meeting. Residents pack the chamber, many holding signs denouncing police practices and demanding accountability. A recall petition circulates through the crowd, already gathering signatures. "This national embarrassment falls directly on your administration," a longtime council member states. "The lack of oversight has exposed our community to federal intervention and potential liability." The mayor's attempted defenses fall flat against public outrage fueled by viral videos of Wilson's detention. At the police station, Tanner sits alone in the break room, suspension notice in hand. His union attorney stands in the doorway, expression grim. "They're building a case for termination," the attorney says. "My recommendation is full cooperation to mitigate damages." Tanner's face hardens. "I was doing my job, following procedure." "That's the problem," his attorney responds. "If that was procedure, the procedure itself was illegal." Meanwhile, Briggs provides testimony to FBI investigators, his honesty about department practices damning but potentially redemptive for his own career. "It was understood that certain vehicles, certain people warranted additional scrutiny," he explains, discomfort evident in his posture. "Not written policy, but definitely understood." "Who conveyed this understanding?" Agent Patel asks. "Training officers, sergeants, including Tanner." At the state capitol, the governor stands before cameras announcing a special commission on police reform. "We've invited General Wilson to consult on best practices ensuring constitutional policing throughout our state." In Washington, Wilson moves between meetings with congressional leaders. His unique position, a general who experienced profiling firsthand, gives him unprecedented credibility with lawmakers across the political spectrum. Senator Michaels leans forward during a Judiciary Committee hearing. "General, would you say this incident is representative of what military personnel of color routinely experience?" "Senator, the data speaks for itself," Wilson responds evenly. "This wasn't extraordinary. It was ordinary. That's the problem." The exchange makes evening news broadcasts nationwide, amplifying attention on the issue. At the State Police Academy, instructors implement new training protocols immediately. Cadets watch body cam footage from Wilson's detention, pausing to identify each violation of law and policy. "This is what unconscious bias looks like in action," the instructor explains. "This is how careers end and departments face federal oversight." The ripple effects continue expanding. The Department of Justice places Lakeside Police Department under a consent decree, establishing federal oversight of operations, training, and discipline. This agreement isn't punitive, the DOJ spokesperson explains to assembled media. It's corrective a pathway to constitutional policing. Department-wide audits reveal patterns extending beyond Tanner's individual actions. Traffic stop data shows racial disparities that can't be explained by demographics or crime rates. Internal communications reveal casual bias embedded in department culture. Meanwhile, Wilson conducts press interviews selectively, always redirecting from his personal experience to the systemic issues at stake. "Do you want Officer Tanner fired?" an interviewer asks directly. "I want proper accountability and systemic change," Wilson responds. This isn't about one officer or even one department. It's about aligning practices with constitutional principles. At the Pentagon, military leadership implements Wilson's recommendations for protecting service members off base. New reporting systems allow personnel to document civil rights concerns. Legal support offices expand their scope to include incidents in surrounding communities. Community liaison positions are created to build relationships with local law enforcement. The Defense Secretary announces these changes in a press conference. What happened to General Wilson highlights vulnerabilities affecting our personnel daily. We're addressing these issues comprehensively to ensure all who serve this nation receive the respect and protection they deserve. Tanner's disciplinary hearing is scheduled for the following week. The charges are extensive: civil rights violations, falsifying reports, improper detention, failure to activate body camera, evidence mishandling. Wilson declines to attend personally, but submits a formal statement focused on policy failures rather than personal grievances. His focus remains on systemic, rather than individual justice, transforming his experience into institutional improvement. As the hearing approaches, public attention intensifies. Activists organize rallies demanding accountability. Police unions issue statements about due process and officer protections. Editorial pages debate the broader implications for policing nationwide. Through it all, Wilson maintains his characteristic composure, navigating political pressures with the same strategic thinking that distinguished his military career. Each interview, each testimony, each recommendation precisely calibrated to achieve maximum institutional impact rather than personal vindication. As Wilson's reforms gain momentum nationally, Officer Tanner makes a decision that surprises everyone involved in the case. The disciplinary hearing room sits silent except for the soft whir of recording equipment. Sunlight filters through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across the long table where the review board members sit with expressions of professional neutrality. The room overflows with officials, media representatives, and community members, all drawn to the culmination of a case that has transcended local boundaries. Tanner sits alone at a small table, posture rigid with defensive tension. His union representation occupies a chair nearby, but the deliberate distance between them speaks volumes. The evidence against Tanner sits in neat stacks case files, complaint histories, and transcripts that collectively tell a damning story. The board chairperson opens the proceedings with formal gravity. This hearing will determine appropriate administrative action regarding Officer Michael Tanner's conduct during the unlawful detention of Major General James Wilson. What follows is a methodical dismantling of Tanner's career. The review board presents findings from their investigation: a pattern of biased policing extending back years, multiple excessive force complaints consistently minimized, incident reports containing discrepancies that supervisors overlooked. Wilson's detention emerges not as an isolated error, but as the predictable culmination of long-established patterns. Tanner's attorney attempts to construct a defense around departmental practices. Officer Tanner was following established procedures for suspicious vehicles and persons. A board member leans forward. Which procedure authorizes detention without probable cause? Please cite the specific policy. The attorney falters, shuffling through papers without finding an answer that doesn't further incriminate his client. Chief Bennett testifies next, walking a precarious line between accountability and institutional protection. His testimony reveals the department's systemic failures while attempting to distance leadership from individual officers' actions. "We provide training on constitutional policing," Bennett states. "Officer Tanner received this training annually. Yet the department took no meaningful action on his previous complaints?" The question lands like a hammer. Bennett's hesitation speaks volumes. The disciplinary system needed improvement. Briggs takes the stand next, his youthful face now bearing the weight of difficult truths. His testimony proves devastating in its honesty, revealing the unwritten rules that shaped department culture. "I was taught to look for indicators that weren't really indicators at all," Briggs explains, voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. "Expensive vehicles driven by minorities, out-of-state plates in certain neighborhoods, things that aren't actually suspicious but were treated as if they were." "Who taught you these practices?" the board asks. "Senior officers, including Sergeant Tanner." FBI agent Cruz presents findings from their broader investigation, contextualizing Tanner's actions within patterns affecting hundreds of citizens over years. Charts display traffic stop disparities that statistics alone cannot explain away. As evidence mounts inexorably, Tanner recognizes the inevitable outcome. When called to testify, he faces a pivotal choice between continued defiance and belated honesty. In a moment that surprises the entire room, he chooses the latter. "I believed I was doing my job as I was trained to do it," Tanner begins, voice subdued but clear. A board member leans forward. "Were you trained to profile citizens based on race?" Tanner meets their gaze directly. "Not explicitly, but implicitly, every day." His admission shifts the atmosphere subtly, not toward forgiveness, but toward a more complete understanding of the institutional failures at work. The way commendations were handed out, the stories told in the break room, who got promoted, it all sent a message about what kind of policing was rewarded, Tanner continues. "I can't defend what I did to General Wilson, but I'm not the only one who did it." His words implicate not just himself, but an entire culture, perhaps his first act of genuine service to the community he claimed to protect. The board deliberates briefly before delivering their unanimous decision. Termination, effective immediately, with referral to the district attorney for criminal charges related to civil rights violations. As Tanner surrenders his badge and service weapon symbols of authority, he failed to honor the weight of consequence finally registers on his face. He passes Briggs in the hallway, their eyes meeting briefly. "They're making an example of me," Tanner says, bitterness edging his voice. Briggs shakes his head. "No, they're making a correction." The distinction matters, not punishment for its own sake, but accountability as a pathway to reform. Meanwhile, Wilson receives the news at the Pentagon while reviewing implementation plans for nationwide training initiatives. He acknowledges the information with a single nod, no celebration, no vindication, just quiet recognition that one part of a larger process has reached completion. As news of Tanner's termination breaks, Wilson makes a decision about his own career that will transform the national conversation. 6 months later, sunlight glints off the polished buttons of Wilson's dress uniform as he stands before the newest class of Police Academy graduates. His presence commands attention without effort, a lifetime of leadership visible in his bearing. This marks one of his final appearances in military uniform. "Tomorrow," Wilson announces to the attentive cadets, "I officially retire from active military service." A murmur runs through the audience. Wilson has become a national figure since the Lakeside incident, his name synonymous with the civil rights reforms sweeping law enforcement agencies nationwide. "I've accepted appointment as director of a new joint DoD-DOJ task force on civil rights and community policing," he continues. The career pivot surprises no one who has followed his advocacy over recent months. Wilson surveys the diverse faces before him. The academy class reflects demographic changes implemented since the reforms began. "Your badge is not authority," he tells them. "It is responsibility. It is a promise to protect constitutional rights, not just public safety. The cadets absorb his words with the seriousness they deserve. Many enrolled specifically because of the changes Wilson's case inspired. In Washington, D.C., a congressional hearing room buzzes with anticipation. The Wilson Act, comprehensive legislation addressing qualified immunity, police training standards, and accountability measures, moves toward a floor vote with rare bipartisan support. Senator Lieu references data from Wilson's Pentagon study. These patterns transcend geography and department size. The consistency of these violations demands federal response. Wilson testifies with characteristic precision. This legislation isn't punitive. It's protective of citizens' rights and officers' integrity alike. Across the country, police departments implement new training protocols, oversight mechanisms, and community engagement requirements. Some embrace the changes voluntarily. Others do so under consent decrees similar to Lakeside's. In Lakeside itself, a new police chief, Rebecca Sanders, recruited specifically for her reform credentials reviews applications for department positions. The force is rebuilding under federal supervision, old practices systematically replaced with constitutional alternatives. Chief Sanders looks up from her desk as Officer Briggs enters hesitantly. He resigned during the investigations, unwilling to continue under the old regime. "You've reapplied," Sanders observes, studying his file. "Why should I rehire you after what happened?" Briggs meets her gaze directly. "Because I learned the hardest lesson early. I know the cost of moral failure now." His honesty earns him a second chance under strict probation, an opportunity to help build the department's new culture from within. At military bases nationwide, new community relations offices open their doors. Service members now have clear reporting channels for civil rights concerns arising off base. Legal support teams expand their scope to include incidents in surrounding communities. The Wilson Task Force publishes its first-year findings, preliminary data showing measurable improvements in civil rights compliance around military installations. The report makes front-page news and triggers policy reviews in police departments nationwide. At a community center in Lakeside, Wilson, now in civilian attire, addresses residents, including many who witnessed his detention that fateful day. "Change isn't about punishment," he explains, voice carrying the same authority without the uniform. "It's about aligning practices with principles we already claim to hold." Mrs. Powell, the gas station owner who witnessed the initial incident, stands to speak. "What happened to you was terrible, General. But the changes we've seen since, maybe something good came from it." Wilson acknowledges this complex truth with a nod. Sometimes progress requires painful catalysts. The reforms continue expanding outward like ripples in still water. Police academies revise curricula nationwide. Departments implement early warning systems to identify problematic officer patterns before they escalate. Community oversight boards gain meaningful authority rather than serving as mere window dressing. Wilson monitors these developments not with the satisfaction of personal vindication, but with the measured assessment of a strategist. Each implementation report, each policy change, each statistical improvement represents a small victory in a campaign he now leads full-time. A plain envelope arrives at Wilson's office, postmarked from Lakeside, containing a message he never expected to receive. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across Wilson's desk at Task Force headquarters. 1 year has passed since the incident that transformed a routine motorcycle ride into a catalyst for national reform. Wilson's assistant places a letter on his desk, unremarkable white envelope, no return address, postmarked from Lakeside. Wilson opens it carefully, unfolding a single handwritten page. The penmanship is precise, deliberate. Michael Tanner's signature at the bottom. Tanner's words acknowledge his mistakes without seeking absolution. "I won't insult you by asking forgiveness," he writes. "Some actions don't deserve it." He describes his journey since losing his badge. Therapy addressing long-buried biases, community service in neighborhoods he once patrolled with suspicion, difficult conversations with his own children about why their father no longer wears a uniform. "I can't undo what I did," Tanner concludes, "but I'm trying to understand why I did it. That understanding doesn't excuse anything. Maybe it prevents someone else from making the same choices." Wilson reads thoughtfully, expression revealing neither satisfaction nor resentment. He places the letter in his desk drawer rather than the official file, a human communication separate from institutional documentation. Later that week, Wilson drives to Lakeside, the custom Harley replaced with an understated sedan. The town has transformed not just the police department, but the community's relationship with it. Citizens attend oversight meetings that once happened behind closed doors. Officers walk beats they previously only drove through. Wilson visits the roadside where he was detained. The spot now bears a small bronze plaque, "Site of the Wilson Incident, a catalyst for change." He reads it without comment, understanding the dual purpose it serves. Reminder and warning both. At the police station, Chief Sanders welcomes Wilson into an office once occupied by Bennett, who resigned shortly after the federal investigation began. Their discussion focuses on sustainability, ensuring reforms outlast the initial momentum and media attention. "The real test comes when the spotlight fades," Sanders acknowledges. "That's why structural change matters more than personnel changes," Wilson responds. "Systems outlast individuals." They review data showing dramatic reductions in biased enforcement patterns. Complaint numbers initially rose as citizens gained confidence in the new reporting systems, then fell as officer behavior genuinely improved. Traffic stops show no racial disparities for the first time in department history. That evening, Wilson speaks at a community forum. The audience includes former Chief Bennett, now working with a police reform advocacy group, his expertise in departmental resistance to change proving valuable from the opposite perspective. Mrs. Powell sits near the front, nodding at points she finds particularly meaningful. Frank Thompson, the veteran who made the crucial phone call that day, attends with his grandson, Lieutenant Thompson. Most surprising to Wilson, Officer Briggs, now Field Training Officer Briggs, sits attentively in his uniform, notebook open. His responsibility now includes teaching new recruits proper procedure and ethical policing. The transformation from reluctant follower to active reformer evident in his engaged presence. Wilson acknowledges them all in his remarks, highlighting the complex human dimensions beyond the policies and statistics. "A year ago, I experienced what thousands of citizens experience daily," Wilson states simply. "The difference wasn't in the incident, but in the response to it." He outlines the progress made with characteristic precision, measurable decreases in civil rights complaints, improved community trust metrics, new accountability systems functioning as designed. "We didn't need new values," Wilson concludes. "We needed to align our practices with the values we already professed." As the forum ends, Briggs approaches Wilson with measured confidence that wasn't present a year ago. "Sir, I'm training new officers now," he says. "I tell them your story every week." Wilson nods. "Tell them their own stories too. Everyone has moments when they choose between what's easy and what's right." They shake hands, a moment of genuine connection across the divide that once separated them. Later, driving away from Lakeside, Wilson reflects on the distance traveled since that hot afternoon when he knelt on burning asphalt. His phone rings, the White House calling about expanding his task force's recommendations nationally. The moral crystallizes in his mind as he answers, "True authority comes not from power, but from principle." If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to PAP Stories now and hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss our latest uploads. Join our community of viewers who understand that stories have power. Each like and share extends these narratives to someone who needs to hear them.